Hello and welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and today we are trolling the trolls. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Martin McMahon. And Martin, it's like I only saw you this morning.
You did only see me this morning. You put me back in the boot of the car and I'm out again.
More importantly, we're delighted to be joined at the Tortoise Shack by award-winning actor, writer, director, occasional columnist, homelessness activist and the largest man in Ireland, Terry McMahon. Now, before we start, I just want to ask, do you remember Twins, the movie Twins? So you're basically Arnold Schwarzenegger and he's Danny DeVito. Because I have two McMahons in here. One is 4'2" and the other one is 7'2".
It's unreal, isn't it? Just awful.
Terry, thanks so much for coming over, mate.
Pleasure, man.
No, look, we've spoken a little while back about doing this, and I suppose what blew me away was standing there that day when you gave your speech at the Inner City Helping Homeless concerts that were trying to raise awareness for the emergency, as Brendan told me. We must call it an emergency. We can't call it a crisis. And you spoke about trying to say, I'm not a psychopath?
Waking the psychopaths.
Waking the psychopaths. But you were trying to explain to your son, I think, as well, that he'd said, I'm going to fix homelessness. Simon Coveney had told you and the guys that were there 15 months ago that he was going to be the minister that fixed the crisis, as he called it. Brendan Ogle told us that he was happy enough to call it an emergency when he was sitting around the table talking to you guys, but outside he changed the language and went back to crisis. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, but the reason he did it was very practical as well.
Oh, yeah.
It was because Ireland, apparently, the position of Ireland in terms of drawing down finance and being regarded or recognised as being compliant or non-compliant to a whole series of strictures were in place. So the language was imperative for him. So he happily, casually lied to our faces throughout the entire meeting and then returned to a language that does not deem Ireland to be the thing that it is, which is in a state of extraordinary emergency.
And that's the cold hard economic reality of that is, if he uses the word emergency, in the EU constitution, there's nothing to stop a state acting in defence of its own people in the event of an emergency, which meant we could have circumvented the GDP to debt ratio rules and we could have maybe done something to help people. But we didn't want to use that language because we chose the markets above the people.
And even beyond choosing the markets, it's the perception. Ireland now is on the up. Ireland is a staggering success story. Yeah. Ireland is the phoenix from the flame. Ireland is the myth made real. And that lie has got to be protected.
And that's actually, you're the first person to say that, isn't it?
Yeah, you are. And we've discussed this between ourselves. Yeah, they're protecting a lie. And they're putting forward this vision of Ireland as the big success story. And it's a fractured Ireland. It's definitely a fractured Ireland. It is for some people a success story. For the same people, it was always going to be a success story for. But everybody else gets left behind. Everybody else gets left behind.
But again, I think part of our problem is that we look at these scenarios and we go, surely we're having a conversation about equality. And you realize we're not having a conversation about equality. We're having a conversation about neoliberal capitalism. And in terms of neoliberal capitalism, Ireland is a huge success story. That's irrefutable. So we look at it as the consequence of that for so many people is devastation. But those people don't matter in that narrative. And that narrative being pumped forward, which is for them absolutely concrete and real, we are the great success story. Mm. So when you take away morality, take away ethics, take away humanity, and you have a conversation driven entirely by commerce and commerce alone, it is a fact, an obscene fact, that we are an extraordinary success story.
Yeah, and I suppose that struck home to me a few months ago when Pascal Donoghue stood in front of a plinth and told people that the OECD had just confirmed that Ireland was not a tax haven. And this report had come out, and I repeat this ad nauseum, but it's worth repeating. What the report actually said was that we were the best tax haven. It actually said we were the most transparent tax haven in the world. And he just said we got the top grade in transparency. Yes, Pascal, we did. It was like a neon light above the country saying, come to us and we'll launder your money. Now, whether you want to launder can be a strong word, but it's not really, because ethically it's wrong, even if legally what we're doing is within the law of the land. But we know it's beggar thy neighbour. We know it's set up to take food off the plates of other people in other countries across the globe. And it's no wonder around the EU table now, people are starting to look at Ireland going, guys, we don't really give a shit what happens to you after Brexit, because you've been stealing from us for years now, you know?
But also this notion that we have of law. You know, when we were kids, remember the phrase would be, but it's the law, you're breaking the law.
Yeah.
And that was sacrosanct. Because the law was about the great egalitarian notion of protecting everybody. Whereas in actuality, laws are clearly constructed by those in control for their benefit and their benefit alone. So we exist in a culture where the law is used to destroy people who, we mentioned Maurice McCabe earlier, but McCabe, the remarkable heroism he showed. There are people every single day who are facing banks, and those banks are lying to their face, breaking every law there is and doing so with impunity. It's been done to me. So I have first-hand experience of it. When we talk about Coveney sitting in the room, these people don't just lie for a living. The lie is the narrative. They don't go away with a certain bout of conscience going, I think I stepped over the line there and may have lied. They go, what's wrong with these fucking morons that they're that naive? They walk into a room and they think we're going to speak truth. Yeah. That's how fucking stupid these people are we're dealing with.
Yeah. I agree with you.
That's how they see us. And they're right to see us that way, because we are that fucking naive. We are that stupid to think, okay, now we're going to have a one-on-one conversation and we're going to be equal and we're going to be decent and we're going to observe an historical accepted notion of propriety. You're a fucking moron. It's like going into a room with a rapist and going, sorry, where's my Vaseline? It makes no sense. These people are abusers, they are killers, austerity is murder, and these people are happily, it's not a case of, again, a bout of conscience, they are happily watching lives be destroyed, because the more that narrative plays out, the more they can verify and justify their position.
And this sounds, and I don't want to individualize it too much, but I do want to mention particularly Simon Coveney, because I do want to mention the fact that he you know, we're not talking about someone who's ever known any hardship in his life. And I know his father passed, but I also know the story of when his father passed. Simon was on the Galapagos Islands after having sailed the family yacht off the shore, off the coast, and landed it. And you're just thinking, okay, these are things that are out of reach of every normal, 98% of people that walk the planet Earth. That's just the reality of it. I mean, you need a bloody license to go onto half of these islands. Never mind, just rock up on your yacht. And then for him to sit there, you're quite right. I think at some level, you do need to be some sort of sociopath to be able to go into a room and say, I'm going to just lie to you now, and I know I'm going to do it. Yanis Varoufakis tells a story about being in with Wolfgang Schäuble. And Schäuble puts his arm around him and says, he was a child of the recovery of Germany after World War II. And he said, I know, it's terrible. Austerity, Greece is getting absolutely decimated. People are set fire to themselves, absolute immolation, horrendous things happening. And he said, and I have to tell you, my heart goes out to you. We can finance these loans. We can redo the deal. Varoufakis said, well, what we do is we do a deal in such a way as you cut off this and you cut off this thing. We won't take it anymore, and it will work out to the greater good of all of us. It'll be hard medicine. We'll take it. He said, yeah, we need more. And he said, but you've just told me that you understand all of this. He said, yeah, but when I go outside that door, he said, everybody else is going to say, if I give you any sort of deal, then they're all going to come knocking. So unfortunately, this, what we just had, this little, my arm around you, it means nothing once we go outside that door. And Varoufakis tells that story, and he said it was the realization that he realized he had no power. He was the Greek finance minister, and he had no power. So when you talk to Simon Coveney, I think maybe he doesn't have the power, because the power lies in the construction industry federation, in the landlord class, in the developers, in the banks, because they were the people who crashed the economy, not the guy who was actually maybe on site putting plaster on a wall. It was the actual guys that were above the parapet, and they've all survived.
But again, with Coveney and his kind, Like you're talking about them being on the Galapagos Islands. I don't have a problem with someone being rich. I don't have a problem with somebody having a fucking great life. That's fantastic. I do have a problem with people destroying other people's lives for that life. Coveney's power and his kind is the power to prove that they will make harsh choices. The power to prove that they will look you in the eye, lie to you, and then destroy you. Their power is in the provability. Look at Harris. Look at any of them across the board. Their provability of a willingness to have their own people despise them, a willingness to betray their own country, betray their own history, and demonstrably so, provably so. That's where their power is, and that's where their reward is. So we exist in a culture now where we talk about, the great acts of anarchy, the great acts of protest, the great acts in our historical context. You're talking about people burning themselves in Greece. All of those extraordinary events that took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s have all been analysed by these people. And they look at them and go, let them have their silly narrative. Let them have their silly protest. Let them make their silly speeches. Let's even meet with them. And let's meet with them and make sure that John Corinne from RTE is across the road filming it. Let's show that we are an open democracy. And then as soon as that's over, let's fuck them over. Let's forget about them. And let's have my wife boast about being at a wedding, a funeral, and a soccer game in 3 different countries in one day, while there's people starving to death in our country.
But he's not the first to do that. Flynn did it before when he showed up on the Late Late.
P. Flynn.
Running to how difficult it was to run 2 households. And I don't think, again, I agree with you. It doesn't matter. These people can go in with money or they can go in with very little. Everybody's got to have a little something to get into politics. But predecessors or other people that have been in there, some of them, and I know some of them, have gone in with good intentions. But the system is so screwed up.
Again, let me just clarify that. I'm talking that they need to publicly show their willingness to be despised by their own people. So yes, there's always the Flynns, there's always the fucking morons who flash everything. I'm talking that now a rite of passage for a politician is to prove, like Alan Kelly now has reinvented himself as this humanitarian. And people will start believing it.
But has he really I mean, he gets...
We will buy into that narrative.
But you're actually right, Terry, because the problem with someone like Alan Kelly is he can then actually have... I guarantee you, if Alan Kelly sends Kevin Doyle a text and say, I want to write an op-ed in the Sindo on the weekend, he'll get it. And it's the biggest circulating newspaper. He gets a forum, he gets a platform, and he's rehabilitated. It's our Oprah moment, when in the States...
I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
But not only have I learned from the mistakes, I've been humbled by them. And now the pleasure of dealing with real people on the ground. I believe in a future.
Look, you have to say,
these are the kind of fucking scum scripts these guys are learning.
But Marion Finucane is the great whitewash. She's the great whitewash. It doesn't matter what you do wrong in Irish political circles. A couple of months, slip into Marion on a Sunday morning. You're a little part of the conversation. Bang, you're back in the circle.
No one ever says to Frank Flannery, Frank, did you ever clarify where that $500,000 was in that account?
250k.
Yeah, but the house in the UK, all of these questions, they never get. They were asked when the report came out. And then it was just impolite to ask it again. Should we ask the first time, and we won't go back and we won't ask again. Terry Prone is back, and not only is she back in a big way, she's back getting money from the Gardaí to give them the lines to tell to the commissions of inquiries to make sure we get no justice for Maurice McCabe. She is scripting the tribunal.
Absolutely. Listen, I work in film. I work in the realm of myth making.
Yeah.
And I recognize the banality of the narrative that they're constructing. And those narratives go all the way back to ancient Greek, Aristotelian constructs. And you have a setup, you have a reversal, and you have a subversion. And you have this sudden revelation of how extraordinary they are. You look at why somebody's paying $5 million a year for propaganda. That's not stupidity. That's incredibly fucking smart.
Yeah.
You got a shallow, vacuous moron who is going to become a fucking superhero because the narrative is going to construct it accordingly.
Completely.
And it's going to start with his socks, his sexuality, and go all the way until he becomes the great, not white hope for our future. Like, that's the idiocy of this narrative, and we're buying into it. His ratings are incredible.
Yeah, I know.
And these stumbling, bumbling, fucking moronic to-camera pieces he does, people go, he's a fucking agent. The amount of other people who go, he's one of us.
Yeah.
And suddenly you go, he's doing Bertie. He's doing that little scam, that little con. I'm just an average bloke doing an average job trying to help all of you. Just let me do that and we can all be pals
I
together.
am so delighted you have said that. I'm so delighted. Yes, 100% he's doing a Bertie on it. Bit of a bumbler. I don't really know how I can fix this, but everybody loves me anyway. It's awful. It's like a rerun. It's like they read the fucking script.
I've often had this conversation where I turn out to people and say, at some point, someone needs to have a word with Mario Rosenstock and say, Mario, you're responsible for at least one Bertie here in an election because you made Bertie so approachable. The gift grub characterization of Bertie made him into something where it didn't actually matter what he was doing in the doll. It was what actually...
But Andy Kenny tried that, and it's very apt. It's almost Paddy's Day. And Andy Kenny, when he was in Paddy's Day, I think it's 3-4 years ago now, and he was giving it the big one. I'm the really accessible Taoiseach. Anybody can phone me. I don't know if you've heard it.
I don't remember what.
Yeah, well, you know who? Okay, so his number got put up on Twitter by May Fane. All right.
No way, that's beautiful.
But hang on, wait, the story takes a twist.
So I got kicked off.
I rang him for some phone sex.
I got kicked off Twitter within hours. It's gone.
Really?
Yeah. And it was he or somebody he authorized made a complaint that I had shared private information, but it wasn't. It was
he made it public.
It was a public phone number. Yeah. It was there online, so I didn't break any rules. Now, whether you like or don't like what I did, they were ringing him from fucking everywhere, from New Zealand, from Australia. He had to put extra guys on the phone, and then he had to be kind of magnanimous about it when the Journal did a piece, and he was being, I don't mind talking, but all the fucking time he kept me blocked off Twitter. 3 weeks, and I kept writing blogs.
Not long enough, Martin, I have to say.
I kept writing blogs and just giving out about it until I got back on again. But he tried it. He tried to be this accessible Taoiseach, but he was too much of a bumbler. Now you have Leo, who has this huge machine that he basically has, like the studios used to give top stars.
Yeah,
he has that whole thing going.
Yeah.
And they are stealing from Hollywood in what they're doing. They're absolutely stealing from Hollywood.
Every construct they're using is deliberately employed to elevate him to the realm of accessibility where we feel, wow. And the term they use in Hollywood is aspirational. A character needs to be aspirational. We need to feel that we have a sense of our own persona anchored in the potential of that person. And that's the construct.
But it's even more cynical than that, in that the party chose somebody who ticked the boxes. Yeah. Not necessarily is this person the right person.
Can I come in there for a second? The party didn't choose.
Yeah.
He lost the popular vote, but the actual people above the parapet. We had Simon McGarr in here, and he said it was a simple. The solicitor lawyer, and he made a very good point. He said it was purely a decision on what will get votes. The biggest voting bloc in the country now is 35 to 45. It's, as you said, it's progressive. Leo ticks all those boxes, even though he's not the sum of his parts. He's clearly not the sum of his parts.
We should be the most excited country on the fucking planet. Young, gay, multi-ethnic.
Yeah.
That should be the most extraordinary combination. That trio of something. We should be the proudest fuckers on the planet. Instead, he's a fucking duplicitous cocksucker on every fucking level.
Allegedly.
Apart from probably his own fucking husband, that poor bastard.
But I have to say, for me, and you're saying he just ticks the boxes, the Fine Gael boxes. Colin Brophy ticks the Fine Gael boxes. He ticks their boxes too, but they didn't choose Colin Brophy. They picked the one that could be marketed to people.
No, but
and it's working.
And it's working really well.
What was amazing to me is that the gay community, there were the one fucking incredibly brave community to go, he does not represent us. Which was brilliant, because that's what they wanted. They wanted the writing on the crest.
Well, there was an awful problem, and I'm speaking as a straight man, and I'm cognizant of that. But there was an awful problem where he picked his moment to come out. He went on to
Marion Finucane.
No, it wasn't Mary McCallum, and he did it, and then he talked about it as what was he, 37 at the time?
38.
Yeah, and you're like going, come on, Leo, really? And the gay community, if anything else, is proud. And that's who they are. Now, his sexuality means nothing to. It's been actually a credit to the Irish people that his sexuality has not been an issue that I've seen.
No, we're like, so what? Get fucking on.
Yeah,
only the dumbest fucking moron has a problem with someone's sexuality.
Yeah.
That's the reality of our culture.
Whatever makes you happy, guys. You know.
I actually think it's kind of cynical of Fine Gael to use Leo's sexuality as a selling point for Fine Gael. I think that's cynical.
But that's the point. That's where it gets interesting, because when they did try to do that, the gay community went, hold on a second. And I'm talking about this in terms of articles that were written. I'm not going to speak about an entire community. And the same as you, I'm straight, but so fucking what? We can't discuss this because we're afraid. We're afraid to discuss anything these days. In case of offending some fucker somewhere.
Now everybody's always offended.
So the reality is that what I thought was amazing is there were brilliantly articulate articles written by members of the gay community, well-known members of the gay community, who says he does not represent us. His politics, his neoliberal politics are against everything that we believe in terms of the idea of equality. And that was incredibly brave. And for me, incredibly exciting. But in terms of Fine Gael using it, we look at the election. The vote for marriage equality. Now we got the abortion referendum now, it's an entirely different thing, but how language was taken back. So it wasn't a case of two men and two women nakedly fucking each other. That was too much for too many people to conceive of. It was about the idea of love. Do you think people are entitled to love?
Yes.
Do you think they're entitled to express that love in a legal congress called marriage? So people who were vehemently, and not because they're bigoted, but because they can't even conceive of the idea of two men being together. It makes them want to vomit. They were in a voting booth and they went, that's what I feel, but I also feel love is imperative. I also feel that I don't have the right to stop people finding love, no matter how disgusting I might conceive of the notion of their physicality. And they voted yes. But that's, to me, the most profound element of what it means to be Irish. That even, despite all your fear, even your ignorance, even your required history, that you can still believe in an optimistic view of empowering an individual. And that's the shit that this fucker is trying to hone in on. That's the lie that he's trying to steal for himself and depict it as truth, when in actuality, he would cut anyone's fucking head off to get ahead.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with you. He is ruthless.
Ruthless, beyond belief.
Oh,
everyone forgets that.
No, he is ruthless, and I agree with you on
The
that.
Fine Gael election was over the morning it was called.
Yeah,
it was over before lunchtime. Literally, they actually went through the charade of the election. Yeah. But he had 17 people join him on the plinth, and every journalist looked around and went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 17. Oh, it's over.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to move it on a little. The special or the strategic communications unit. Now, we saw this week. It is. It's totally. Let's just call it what it is. Propaganda. We saw this week that the government, who pays I&M money to put fake news in their papers, then appointed the editor-in-chief of I&M to represent Ireland in the EU fighting fake news. I mean, that's outlandishly crazy.
But it's also, and I hate to say it, very fucking smart.
Yeah,
and this is what bugs me, is that I hate the fact that occasionally I sit back and go, these fucking cunts are smart.
But it's the neck. It's the fucking neck.
But that jockey's bollocks neck is what's required. You talked about the idea of Mario Rosenstock. Do you remember, was it Jimmy Fallon? I think it was Jimmy Fallon,
yeah.
Who they claim was the reason Trump got elected.
Yeah, playing with his hair.
Because he was toying with him, messing with him, and he showed this affable idiot fucking uncle.
He made him humane.
Yeah. And that idea, what they're doing here, they're controlling the narrative. Again, back to the Hollywood system that you described perfectly. It's exactly what they used to do with their stars. You control the narrative. So how better to control the narrative than to take the lie, take the person who's controlling the lie, and put them in a position where they're in control of exposing the lie.
Yes.
That's our fucking government in a nutshell.
Yeah, it is. Completely.
And more importantly, what they're getting really good at now is actually then when they're caught on the lie, like Simon Harris was yesterday, he turned around and he said, but you sat here 16 months ago and you said to me this. I did, yes. And you know what? No one's more disappointed than me.
I hold my hand.
Yeah, and he spoke. And then Simon does what Simon does. He speaks like a machine. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, you know what? He owned up to it, folks. And you're going, yeah, but there's still 714 people on trolleys.
I blame media for, and by media I mean the usual stalwarts in media that we have in this country for that. They just don't bury anybody when they have it, when they have them in their sights and they can take them down. And that's the difference between Ireland and other jurisdictions. Fucking shoot them down anywhere else. Here it's like, oh, well, we wing them, we'll give them a chance to recover. You know, no, finish them now.
There is zero accountability here, but also, again, as a blogger, you would realize that the idea of the media is a very limited phrase and actually has become so expansive. We are the media. And in actuality, this phrase that I can't help but fucking using, the normalization of obscenity.
Mm.
The more shit you throw at somebody, eventually they get to a position where they go, can I just breathe for 5 seconds? And then you reach forward and you wipe a little bit of shit off their mouth and they suddenly feel beholden to you. They're suddenly appreciative of it.
Yeah.
And that's what these lying fucks are doing.
Stockholm
This
stuff.
storm of shit, non-stop, relentless. Used to go to Bad News Friday, where they'd release the bad news on a Friday because it wouldn't make the papers on Monday because things would happen. Now every day is Bad News Friday.
But it's the shock doctrine. It's Naomi Klein.
It's totally and orchestrated.
Yes.
And brilliantly effective.
Yeah, no, like it comes. We talk about homelessness. We're obsessed with trying to get people to wake up to the fact that it's not just the people that are on the streets. It's not just the people that are in emergency accommodation. It's across the board. Homelessness is a huge issue, and you try to explain to them. No, you're okay. You try to explain to them that what we need now is people to come together and a consensus and get mobilized. If we got 100,000 people on the street for water, why don't we get 200,000 people on the street when we've 10,000 people homeless? And then one of the other things they'll do is Friday at 6:31 when the 6 o'clock news is just about finished. The report will come out a new high in homelessness, and everybody will forget about it by Monday.
Look, I was given out that we're going to pass 10,000. The next figures should put us past 10,000 on homelessness. And that line is going to go without any notice from anybody. Nobody's going to say, we've just crossed the line of 10,000. It's
But
so...
why?
Why should we?
When it crossed 10,
I agree with you.
but we did nothing then.
Yeah, I agree
When it
with
crossed 20, we did nothing. When it crossed 100, we did nothing. When it crossed 1,000, we did nothing. We do nothing. So the actuality, we talked about this earlier, but homelessness is the single greatest advertisement that the banks could possibly hope for. It's a multi-million-dollar free advertising campaign. Because everybody who can't afford to pay their mortgage, everybody who can't afford to pay their rent, everybody who has an empty fridge and hungry fucking children, looks out on the street and sees people wrapped up in sleeping bags on cardboard. And they go, we are a millimetre away from that.
Yeah.
We have got to pay the mortgage, no matter how hungry our kids are, no matter how little we can invest in their future. And that is the genius advertisement of homelessness. So why would it be in any controlling class conglomerate's interest to fucking fix homelessness?
And it's absolutely so relevant that you say that, because on the capitalist side of that, the other beauty of that is because it's there and the loans are now, you can make non-performing loans now performing. You can actually swoop in, you make them profitable. Yes. Because the asset class increases in value, and so it is actually the hollowing out of humanity for the price of shareholder value, and starting to pay a dividend again. Permanent TSB returned to profit today. Permanent TSB, 3 times were told by the EU and ECB, you're not a viable bank. The only reason they're viable is because they managed to hollow out what was left of their humanity. I want to change tact a little bit. I saw Leo with Arnie, and I know South by Southwest is a big deal in the States. You go to Austin, Texas, you have this big event. Even in the podcast realm now, it's become a huge deal where everybody goes along and they market their wares, and it's a huge thing. You were at South by Southwest, and I it's something I'd love to do. What was your experience like?
We made a film called Charlie Casanova. It was one of the most hated fucking films ever made. And we made it 8 years ago. We made it for next to nothing. But it was about the controlling class. It was about a controlling class psychopath called Charlie Casanova. And the tagline was, you don't know him, but he already hates you. So, like a Fine Gael policy. But the film was one of those things, kind of do or die. You have to do it. And I was approaching 40, and I had 2 young kids and a missus. And I got a tattoo on my arm, and the tattoo says, "The art is in the completion. Begin." Now, as pretentious wank as that sounds,
It's up there, I'll give you that.
even worse, I'm quoting myself. The ultimate in hubristic narcissism. But anyway, I needed something to wake myself up to the fucking reality that nobody was going to make this happen except you. So I put a post on Facebook. And I had written a script called Charlie Casanova, and I knew that nobody was ever going to want to touch it. But I put a post up on Facebook and I said, intend making no budget feature Charlie Casanova. Need cast, crew, equipment, and a lot of balls. This is sincere, so bullshitters fuck off in advance. And I was sitting at home, it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was kind of new to Facebook, didn't fully understand it. I was drinking whiskey and the kids and the missus were asleep, and I pressed post. And I immediately felt like the dumbest fuck on the planet. Immediately felt like you've just embarrassed yourself. Reached over to delete it, and a message popped up. So I said, fuck it, I'll leave it. Went to bed, had a few more whiskeys, went to bed, and then woke up about 7 o'clock in the morning in a blind panic, realizing you've just made a fucking moron of yourself. In public, went to the computer, and there was 176 responses. And the only stipulation was you had to read the script. The script was available at a kind of a WordPress site. And 3 weeks later, we were on set with borrowed cameras from Bradog, the great organisation Bradog. Pauline Brennan arranged the cameras. With a cast and a crew, many of which I'd never met before, except from the first day of principal photography. And we had 11 days to shoot the film. But the reason we had 11 days is because the cameras had to be back by midnight on the 11th day. So that became our
Deadline.
our production structure, yeah. And we shot this ridiculously insane film in that time frame, and then went to a nightclub and fucking got drunk. And then the next day you realize, now we got to edit it. Now again, this was 936 euros was the budget. And I paid for food. And got the film edited, Tony Kearns edited the film, and then we thought, okay, now we have something. Sent it into the film board, and the film board fucking hated it. So we thought, okay, I have no idea what to do. Send it to, and the only things I had was DVDs, or handwritten DVDs. There was no money. I'd lost my job at this stage. I got fucked by RTE, Fair City and RTE, in the process of making the film. And sent out these DVDs, and then coming up to Christmas, you get that email that you dream of. It's from Jana Pearson, the head of South by Southwest Film Festival, saying that Charlie Casanova is one of the most exciting films she's seen in 20 years. And they'd be honoured to have the world premiere at South by Southwest in the narrative feature competition. So it was the first Irish film ever to do that. Actually, I think it's the first Irish film ever since still to have done it. So we were going to South by Southwest. The problem was I knew fuck all about South by Southwest. And then I did a bit of research, and I discovered it's one of the most illustrious festivals in the world. 650,000 people
Huge.
descend on Austin, Texas. So I was broke, but fuck me, we're suddenly catapulted. So it was talked about in Variety magazine, Filmmaker magazine, all the major magazines, all the major newspapers, all everywhere except in Ireland. Nobody would even touch it. And there was a lovely woman, a good friend of mine, who sent out a whole bunch of press releases to everybody, and nobody gave a fuck. So we realized, okay, this is going to be a hard slog. And then we get nothing. We realized we have to borrow money to go to South by Southwest. So by the time we get enough money borrowed to get there, we end up having a hotel that's about 15 miles outside town. A shithole hotel that's impossible to get to. And then I get a call from the film board. And I've subsequently, she's a wonderful woman. I won't say her name out of courtesy, but I've subsequently fallen in love with her. She's a fantastic character. But she called me and she says, "Hi, Terry. We believe you're going to South by Southwest. There's a contingent of us going over. I'm just wondering, can you get us some tickets for the film?"
Oh, Jesus.
And she caught me on a bad day, and I says, "You fucking malignant cunt."
Oh, God, Terry.
That's what I said to her. We talked about it at dinner many, many months later. Great character, great woman. But I said, "You fucking scum, leech, fucking magpie, fucking pieces of shit, gave us nothing, treated us like shit, and now you want us to fucking arrange freebies?" And she says, "I knew none of this. Please come in and talk to me tomorrow." So I went in the next day, and she arranged for $5,000 to go to a press agent, or whatever the fuck those people who do press.
John Concannon.
So we went over in our shithole hotel and arrived in Austin, Texas. And because we were one of the competition films, we were treated like fucking kings. An amazing, amazing festival. But before I went over, I contacted Culture Ireland. And Culture Ireland are the great, massively funded organisation that's about promoting Irish culture abroad. And they offered less than the price of a single flight. Nothing for hotels, nothing for anything. And the amount of money they offered was so fucking minuscule. I wanted to tell them to shove it up their fucking holes. But I couldn't because I borrowed the money to go there. And all the people involved in the film had borrowed the money to go there. And for that, Culture Ireland got their name on every single piece of press release, every poster for the film, every congratulations had to be said in every interview. These fucking malignant scum were leeching off us while they were supposedly promoting us.
And did you see this today? Only today. There was, and we had Aaron Valley in here, the essayist, and he writes with the Huffington Post, and fabulous writer, absolutely love him to bits. And we had him in pre-Christmas, and he actually brought up the fact that struggling artists receive less than the money they spend promoting what they give to artists.
Yeah.
And today, Ellen Coyne in the Times had a piece saying Creative Ireland is under pressure now because it's the realization has hit them that they've spent, I think it's 3 times more on marketing their budget than they do on actually delivering art. And the realization for people is like, oh, was that happening? Yes, it's fucking happening every day. You have creative people here in this country. We have great creative people here. And they're made to feel like paupers. Their work isn't shown a value. I spoke to an illustrator last night, and I spoke about, what we would like to do in terms of this podcast. And the reaction was, oh, well, I don't. I said, no, your work has value. And you nearly have to tell people your work has value because the simple fact is they've been told for so long that it doesn't.
But even beyond value, and this is part of the problem here, because Charlie Casanova is a very, very political film, we were not just devalued, we were silenced. So we arrive in South by Southwest. Suddenly there's a big fucking party thrown by Culture Ireland on the fucking coattails of Charlie Casanova.
They threw a party.
They threw a huge party, all expenses paid, a big dinner, everything paid for. Guess who wasn't invited?
You.
The people behind Charlie Casanova.
That doesn't surprise me.
We arrived, the Irish Film Board set up a stand in South by Southwest. We arrived at the stand, the 2 staff put their head down and walked away from us.
Right, there you go.
There was a girl who was there from Austin, Texas, who was working there and goes, hi guys, who are you? And we told them who she was and she was in a state of shock. Now, fast forward. A couple of years later, Enda Kenny is in South by Southwest. Now, we were told by the film board that they've been looking for a foothold for a long time in South by Southwest, but could not get one. They used us. They used Charlie Casanova. A few years later, Enda Kenny is in South by Southwest. You know how I know? Because I'm back in South by Southwest with a world premiere of a second film, Patrick's Day. Do you know how much Culture Ireland offered me to go to South by Southwest with Patrick's Day?
2.4 million.
It's the exact same amount they offered with Charlie Casanova.
Really?
Yeah.
The price of a flight again?
Not even less than the price of a flight. And wanting all those verifiable rubber stamped approval. It's the biggest fucking scam and con out there. So when we not that we did it deliberately or consciously, the simple fact is we broke the fucking mold.
And you set a template for them.
We broke everything up. And the last thing is that then they had the American ambassador was coming over to meet Michael D. Higgins and have a big fucking dinner in wherever the Arsenal they're on. And they were inviting all the alumni of South by Southwest. There was no alumni until after we fucking broke the mold. And then Janet Pearson was so extraordinary, she flew over to Galway to introduce Charlie Casanova at the Galway Film Fair. Charlie Casanova won Best Film at the Galway Film Fair. But she was there. She felt such a fucking loyalty to it. She flew over. They were saying they've been trying to get her to come for decades. So we did all that unintentionally, not orchestrated, but all of that happens as a consequence of our film. They have a big fucking shindig in Arsenal, South by Southwest, for all the business fucking potential for this country. And guess who wasn't fucking invited?
It's shocking because there he is. He's standing there, our leader, with the Terminator, and he's quipping, "I'll be back." And you're thinking to yourself, That doesn't happen by accident. So I'm just so, like, Terry, completely oblivious to that was the actual, that you were the trailblazer.
I'm the only Irish filmmaker who's ever had 2 world premieres at South by Southwest. Nobody gives a fuck.
Well, is it because your face doesn't fit the mold?
It's because I got a big fucking mouth, and I'm not the kind of person you want to promote. We want easily containable cardboard box fucking dogs in the back of a car with their nodding heads. That's what we need. We need people with sound bites who can sit there and give those idiotic smiling interviews.
And everybody who speaks out ends up being told, oh, look, he's a begrudger. He gives out about the system. Sure, he took the money. And no one understands in the context of what you have to pour your heart and soul into. The money that you took was a pittance, and it was actually an insult to...
It was even on their website, they put Charlie Casanova down as a short film. This is the first Irish film ever to have... Anyway, I won't even go into that because that's...
Oh, I know, but my point is, I know South by Southwest is a huge deal. Like,
it's insane. 650,000 people. But the last point I will make is that 2 world premieres at South by Southwest, and I cannot get, 4 years later, I can't get a fucking movie made. Nobody wants to go near. Now, do you think if I was some fucking senator's son or some fucking politician's son, I'd be having a problem making a 3rd movie?
No, I agree. Because what you would see is actually, when you think about that in the grand scheme of in the arts, you take your something that's delivering and you push it, you pump it, and you actually get it for all it's worth because that's marketable. Like, Terry, you're a brand as much as you are, because someone said to me before, have you ever met Terry? I said he's a force of nature. And I have. And I think you're a force of nature. So, like, fanboy aside, other than that, it's wonderful that when I know now the context of South by Southwest, because when I saw Leo doing that, I just thought to myself, God, we have a huge disconnect here between what is actually the real artists that are the Aarons of this world and the people who are actually contributing to Irish society, and actually people who are grabbing on the coattails and making hay out of it.
Well, that's why it's back to this idea of who's controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
We broke the mold for Irish cinema in South by Southwest, and we've been erased from history as it's happening. That's the reality.
But and you've said it's because you're a loudmouth and you've no problem telling them to fuck off. And you got involved in Apollo House because of your profile, because your profile carried people with you. It helped.
No.
It so helped.
No, Apollo House was... I tell you the truth behind Apollo House in terms of... It was nothing to do with profile. Dean Scurry, the wonderful Dean Scurry, asked myself, John Connors, Damien Dempsey and Maverick Sabre to do workshops with young men out in Ballymun. And part of those workshops was having the courage to realise that you're a fucking coward. Because how can you be mentors to these young men when you've done fuck all in the centenary year of 1916? So I worked with these young men for about 6 months, and Dean wanted to get people together to have a conversation about what can be done in that centenary year. And myself and John Connors and Damien Dempsey in particular were saying very explicitly, I don't want to get involved in some bullshit fucking handshaking, that's all, hold hands and sing Kumbaya, my lord bullshit. We're either going to fucking do something or we're not. So that was the gauntlet thrown down, and the question was, what are we going to do? I wanted to take over the GPO. So that was...
I like the ambition. I like that ambition.
But the 2 biggest advocates of that were John Connors and Damien Dempsey. So the 3 of us...
Love Damien.
Damien is amazing. And John is amazing.
Oh, John is... Listen, John, if you listen, mate, we would love to have a chat with you.
And John couldn't do the GPO on his own.
He's fucking good. John is... Both of them are incredible men. But anyway, the point is that you're suddenly in that position where we're going, this has to be the level of the audacity. It has got to be a grand gesture. It has got to be a gesture that makes the front of the New York Times. If we're not making the front of the New York Times, we are not doing the right thing. Now, there was people in the room who shat themselves. And by their own admission afterwards, some of them fucking scarpers. They were going, what the fuck? Taking over the GPO? And these 3 cunts are serious? So we had a long conversation about the practicalities of the GPO. Now, I was homeless when I was a teenager. So I was homeless for about 1.5 years. So I have some experiential knowledge of the reality, the pragmatic reality of being homeless. So we talked about, okay, where would we house the homeless? How would we take the guards? And first, it was imperative that we didn't hurt the guards, because these are just security men who were They're not like fucking the Gardaí sheep corner.
Oh, you couldn't hurt them either.
Well, you fucking should hurt somebody.
Allegedly.
But some of them should be fucking... Anyway, but the point is that we went from that conversation to going, okay, it can't be the GPO, and it was simply because of the fundamental reality of taking care. It had to be a grand gesture, but it also had to have the pragmatic ability to take care.
So you needed something empty.
Mm.
Okay.
So that was when the conversation about NAMA on buildings. Because a NAMA on building is still a political grand gesture, but at the same time. And then out of nowhere, Dean, the fucking glorious lunatic that he is, he calls me up and he goes, "Brother, it's happening." And again, it's like some dodgy movie. I should have said, "What's happening?" Let's explain it.
You jump in the car, no time to explain.
I just said, "I'm in, no problem." That's all I fucking said. And he said, "But we need a speech." Well, not for fuck's sake.
Yeah, that's right, the speech.
He said, "We need a speech." I said, "What the fuck do you mean, need a speech?" He says, we need you to write something. Only you can write something to fucking make the masses, whatever." I go, Jesus Christ, man. So I went home, orchestrated a fight with the missus so she'd fucking kick me out. And went to the bar in the corner with the computer under me fucking coat and sat down and wrote, "This is our Ireland."
Yes, I know.
And that became something where you're going, okay, what can we write that makes people feel that they are not lost in this fucking ugly machine we call Ireland? Dean called up a few hours later, and I just read it to him over the phone, and he says, "It's perfect." He says, "Who do you want to read it?" And I says, "I want the most fucking iconic Dublin working class man of all time to read it." And he went, "Conor McGregor." I said, "Not fucking Conor McGregor." Who? Jim fucking Sheridan.
Yeah.
And Dean says, "I'm on it." So Dean called Jim and explained to him what was happening and the speech and all that. And then the next day we all met in United office.
Yeah.
That extraordinary fucking night. First time I met Brendan, actually. Brendan Ogilvie, remarkable Brendan Ogilvie.
Great guy.
Great guy. And
Nearly killed me earlier, but that's aside.
And Dave Gibney, another extraordinary man. But anyway, that was one of those occasions where it was a large ante-room and then a smaller room to the side, and people were brought in, and it was all kind of need-to-know bases and secret, because it was a big fucking deal. It could have gone badly tits up. And the speech was my functionary purpose. So you're being flattering for saying you're using a platform. You're not using a platform. You go, okay, this is your function. You've got to make sure. So Jim read it, and Jim was a little bit nervous about it. And Jim Sheridan, a genius. I think our greatest filmmaker of all time. Mm-hmm. But Jim's a fucking clever bastard. Jim has an extraordinary ability to get people to do shit they don't want to do. And Jim says, "I'm not sure. Would you read it? Would you ever read it?" I said, "I don't want to fucking read it, Jim. I wrote it for you." He said, "But just read it so I can hear it." So I read it out, and then fucking poor old Glenn Hansen was sitting there going, we can't honestly read this out. We can't do this. And Jim was going, "Yeah, you might be right." And then I said, "Look, Jim, when you speak, people fucking listen to it. Say whatever the fuck you want." So we go outside the GPO. And again, remember now, because we're looking at this retrospectively. Because it ended up being an extraordinary event. But this could have gone fucking so badly wrong on so many levels.
Yeah.
So anyway, we film that stuff outside the GPO.
Went very well.
And then I head off. Jim was brilliant, as he always is. Then I headed off. I had to go back to the kids and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't go down to the Apollo House because I thought they don't need another fucking moron, especially somebody who's fucking 6 foot.
Yeah, you're a bit of a target.
I spent more time in Mulligan's, I have to be honest, than I did. I was sitting at the bar. This is honestly, I'm at the bar. I'm the point, and the lads from Code Line are there, and this girl walks up along beside them and stands there, and her friend comes around the other side to take a photo as if she's with them to get the photo. And I said, "Okay, this is not what we were intending." You know?
But that's the thing, is part of the great. Now, we'll go into the other side of the devastation of Apollo House. But part of the great beauty of that was that sense of community. That sense of astonishing community.
And there was huge crowds who came spontaneously.
Yeah, out of love. Out of love for a belief in a philosophy.
That something could change.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, to his eternal credit, Greg has a big van, drove up to IKEA and said, "I want your your bedding, I want your mattresses, I want this. And they went and said, okay, here's what we're doing. And they came out, so he filled the van. Then he drove across the other side to Gulliver's, to home base, and he said, I'm off to be in IKEA, and they gave me this. And if you don't do that, I'm going to tell people that you didn't do it.
Beautiful.
And I just thought, and the best moment was when he turned around to me and he said, and you know me, Tony, I'm not an activist. I said, I hate to break it to you, mate. You just became one,
Well, it's funny because even the word activism suddenly acquired its appropriate romantic reassessment, which is perfect. But just to finish there, so Jim doesn't want to read the speech, and rightly so. And then I go home, go into Apollo House. I'm laughing me bollocks off because John is Facebooking it live. And I'm going, John is supposed to be discreet. You're fucking lunatic. But then I realize that's the genius of John.
Yeah, it is.
Just that complete fucking unabashed courage. So then I was playing all the rest. And I'm loving this, but I got my kids and I got to take care of. And there's another part of me who's really eager to go down. So the next day I go down and I bring my daughter in the pram, and everyone is there, and Codaline is singing, and everyone is singing, and I just thought, okay. And then I've been gestured to come up, and I thought, I don't need to stand up there. Brian, down here with these fucking people. Your job was to write that thing. The thing didn't happen. That's okay. That's fair enough. And then later tonight I got a call from Dean. He says, you're reading out the script tonight in Ballymun. There's a comedy night out. I said, what the fuck are you going to do reading this at a comedy night, you fucking nutty? And when only Dean can, he goes, trust me. So I go out, I'm pissed off, I'm fucking hungover and all the rest, and you go out, and there's a comedy club audience sitting there.
Up in the Axis.
Up in the Axis. Beautiful venue. Magnificent. One of my favourite venues in the fucking whole city. But Dean, there's a big oversized t-shirt there that's wet, and I put it on over my clothes, and I'm standing there going, what the fuck am I doing? And I haven't even read it since I wrote it. I have no idea. It's on my phone. And he goes, we're going to read it now. So the audience are laughing their bollocks off, having the night of their fucking life. And then this tall, long-haired fucking nonce walks on. And they're going, is he a comedian? What's happening? And Dean explains that in some rambling way what it's about. And then they're sitting there going, holy fuck.
Buzzkill.
Buzzkill. Yeah. What a cunt. What they're justifiably thinking. So then I try to give it a little bit of context, and then I start reading it. And you're reading it, and you have no idea how these things are going to go. But then you suddenly see a guy who starts covering his face, and then there's a woman crying, and then you're watching, and then the whole mood of the place shifted completely. And what I didn't know was there was a comedian backstage who was the lead comedian. And he had Dean against the wall going, what the fuck are you doing? How the fuck am I supposed to follow that?
So the Beatles had just been on, and it wasn't Mr. Saturday Night was left standing in the wings.
Anyway, long and the short of it is, I went home that night. I knew the audience were moved by it, but I had no idea if it had any power or not. And then Dean got a bit nervous, because some people were saying, this speech is too incendiary. We can't take it. I didn't think it was incendiary at all, to be honest with you, but I pretended I didn't get his text. I uploaded it. And I went to bed, and the next morning, the Times had picked it up, the Independent, all the fucking Joe Delay, everyone.
You know what, and that's funny you say, and I hate to cut across you again, but you did say you thought it could be incendiary. I think that's the problem we have. Sometimes we put the brakes on ourselves when we know we shouldn't. We know when it has to be called for as it is. Martin,
I'm the least to put a fucking break on
there you
myself.
go. So
I will go incendiary every
we will have this chat, and Martin will say to me after a podcast, he'll say to me, do you think I went too far? And I'll say, no, you were just true to yourself, mate. And I will say that, and it's, so that the power of that speech it's a great speech.
Yeah,
there's no question it's a great speech.
For me, the simple thing is that when you question your own fear. So it's back to what you're talking about. It's like John Facebooking live.
Yeah.
That's the incendiary action.
Yeah.
Why are we even so protective? But what we didn't know was that was going to be fucking seen by millions of people, and it was going to generate the kind of response it generated.
Al Jazeera called. Remember, Al Jazeera were tweeting us going, "Will you give us your take on this and that?" And you're going, it went around the world.
But that's what's amazing, is that you suddenly have this hundreds and hundreds of letters. You can't even fucking respond to them all, but you suddenly go, the thing that we tried to tap into from the outset was people's capacity, people's profound humanity, and people's belief in the reality that it doesn't have to be the way it is. And suddenly you go, that's what Apollo House was about. On the best level, that's what Apollo House was about at every moment.
Mm-hmm.
On the worst level, it was every time we took that humanity away, every time we tried to control it or measure it against a system that was corrupt, we ended up fucking ourselves.
Mm.
But the greatest, I believe that the greatest thing that's happened in our country in decades is Apollo House.
Can I ask you a question about that? You did Apollo House, and there was great people involved, and it tapped into something that already existed. It was there, it just needed to be brought out. When you got fucked over by the government on Apollo House, does that mean that the next action or the next step forward has to be an even more profound step forward?
It's a great question. I had a major, major problem with us agreeing to go to the High Court in the first place. I was going to walk at that stage. And the reason I didn't is because I didn't want it to be some kind of hubristic fucking action. John kind of walked at that stage. Myself and John, we spent a day in the High Court, long conversations about what the fuck are we doing, breaking the law for all the right reasons, and then acquiescing to the law for all the wrong reasons.
You got to remember, go back to, they all talk about Martin Luther King. He said, if the law is inhumane, it's not good law.
Yeah.
And that's the simple fact. And that's the reality. Because the amount of people who said to me, like, what are you doing? Why are you even showing? I said, because, day-to-day banker folks, and it's like the day job. And I went, yeah, but I'm okay with this. And, I'm okay with this civil disobedience.
Well, activists, Apollo House has lit fires elsewhere. Even last week, activists took over their equivalent of an ALA building in the UK. It was, and they occupied it with the same purpose as Apollo did. I don't know if it's still going on. The last I looked at it, they were still hanging in there. But the problem is now, when Apollo House, when the promises that were made, when, that we'll get everybody out of homeless accommodation,
lies were told.
Hotels and B&Bs by July last, and we're now in March, and it's actually worse. So the promise just hasn't been broken. It has been absolutely fucking blown through. So where next? How do you bring this back into the everyday life of people where they can feel it's a good thing to get involved in this? It's a good thing to do this.
Well, I think there's two things that in the meeting with Coveney, and I don't think it's a problem discussing this because it's not indiscreet, it's just the facts, but there was a long series of conversations, and I was sitting there going, what the fuck is everybody talking about? None of this makes any sense. Can we just cut to the chase? But they asked me to they used to use me as kind of a grenade.
Mm.
So we go downstairs and
I wonder why.
we went downstairs and then it says, okay, we need to shake it up and we need you to speak.
Mm.
So I knew Coveney's history, obviously. I also knew what he was accustomed to being addressed as. So everyone called him Mr. Coveney, or Minister Coveney. So we go back upstairs, we sit down, and he's all but ignored my existence at this stage, because obviously I'm just some fucking moron sitting in the corner quietly. And then I says, Simon. And immediately he blanched.
Yeah, you could see it. The barrier was broken down.
I said, there's a whole bunch of people outside who think you're a bunch of lying scumfuck bastards. What can you do now to prove them wrong? And his face turned purple. He had never been addressed in that way before. But also you could see him going, the temerity of this piece of shit to address me by my first name and then ask me the question. And then he returned to it several times. I am not a liar. And you're going, this is Nixon stuff here. This is crazy shit here. Our problem was our naivety in thinking we were equals because we were sitting across the table. We were fucking naive morons. They ascertained that very, very fast. And they played with us, toyed with us, went through all the fake dramas of conflict and complexity, and then went, that was a fucking walk in the park with these morons.
Yeah.
The problem with Apollo House is that the people who were most anarchic, in the best sense of the term, in Apollo House, were the people who would probably do the most damage to themselves if there's no doctors or nurses or anybody allowed in the building. But also, you can't help. I was there on that last night. all hell broke loose. Nobody talks about the last night of Apollo House because nobody wants to talk about it. But I was fucking there. It was nuts. It was fucking nuts. And the guy who broke the fucking lock and turned on the gas and turned on the fucking lights, who was Brendan Ogle, they wanted to fucking hang him from 0 to 0 in half a second. And I stood over his shoulder, and he talked about it later. But a lot of the times, they were looking to whether or not they should charge, and we're going, who's that cunt behind him? That's where the silence becomes...
That's crazy. And then again, you're the two biggest men in the world, so...
No, what he said, and I thought it was extraordinary, he said, look, I'm not going to try and influence anybody here, and I'm certainly not going to take a vote. You can decide what you want to do.
And Brendan just went balls out and did what he wanted.
But these are the realities. And then he left. And then I stayed for a while and I watched what was happening, and I went, okay, what is Apollo House? Apollo House, at its absolute best, is a profound humanitarian gesture of equality. At its worst, it's just another exacerbation of a deeply ugly, cancerous system. And what happened after Apollo House was the people who were supposed to be looking after them, there was 20 people ended up in the Malvern Hotel. Paid for by fucking Glenn Hansard out of his own fucking pocket. You know, it's amazing how quickly we demonize people. Glenn Hansard, who for some reason has been demonized by some people, is one of the most generous, staggering human beings.
Astronomically generous. Every time I've done little bits of fundraising for inner city helping homelessness, I've fucking ran the marathon and all that ridiculous thing, and that, oh God, I sound like I'm virtue signaling. I'm sorry, but
is virtue signaling.
But that
phrase is disturbing.
But it is. It's a piece of shit phrase to say.
And it's only used against the people who were trying to do decent things.
That's my point.
Never used against the cunts who
that's my point.
Virtue.
That's my point. Because I know that Glenn has stepped up to the breach several times when Anthony Flynn looks at the cupboard and it's bare. And so we mock them, but fuck you, everybody else. Fuck you, everybody else. I didn't put a t-shirt on and do what it was. And Glenn, he walks the walk. Well,
I've been behind the scenes with Glenn because we didn't know each other. And when Glenn saw the speech, he went, "No fucking way." We talked about it afterwards. He's a magnificent man. I fucking love him. But afterwards he went, I was sitting there going, who's this psychopath? I need to get out of this room. That was his response.
It's a very small room we're in right now.
Do you have anybody who carries the bodies for you? Like, you're the type of guy that's just going to turn up at the door and go, I have a body to get rid of here. Come on.
The truth is, I've never been more naive. I've never felt less concrete on anything, less specific, less reductionist, less extremist, in fact. Because again, more and more, all our conversation seems to be about extremism. So you're either pro or anti. There's no grey area. There's no middle ground for the discussion. There's nothing. So when we look at someone like Glenn Hansard, you go, the guy's a cunt. Because he can't be anything else. He has to be a cunt. Then you get to know him and you go, this guy's a remarkable human being. And then you go, there you go to extremes again. He's just a fucking human being. But then you go, no, in actuality, the cumulative measure of this man, he's a remarkable human being. And yet there are people out there who will queue up to insist he's a cunt, despite everything he's done. And that's the worst aspect of our culture, because the same people who will queue up to insist that he's a cunt, despite the fact that he is the opposite, will get a smile when they see Leo Varadkar flash by with his socks.
Oh, yeah, I know.
There was an interesting thing today, and it goes back to, because you and I, and you particularly, are a magnet for trolls. Okay? But and I'm just very conscious because it was funny today, because we broadsheet put up our interview with Paul Murphy.
Yeah.
And in the bump, it actually said, Martin writes, and it was Martin's bump about what happened in Lidl. And the reply was, who does Tony think he is?
It was fucking scared of me. Because I think no shit.
He thinks they're scared of him. It's not at all. It's just they actually hate me. I'm a hate figure for that. Now, it is. Oh, I would say it's flattering. It's kind of creepy as well, though. When you wake up and your boss tells you, I've got an email from, anonymous people saying, you're a troublemaker and you're this, that, and the other. That's so out of line. And that stems from that culture.
But again, what I find fascinating, because again, maybe it's the filmmaker in me, maybe it's the fucking romantic in me, but I'm fascinated by the character of a troll. Because I don't find trolls offensive anymore. I find them kind of sad. I actually kind of feel a sympathy for them. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. Where you go, okay, what is it in somebody?
There's a hurt there.
No, but because what's interesting, there's the claims that some of them are Fine Gael fucking youth. Yeah. Because some of them are highly educated. Now, highly educated in the reductionist academic sense of the term, because they're dumb fucks. But they love language, and they love deconstructing language, and they love exposing the idiocy and the weakness of the author. But then there's other people where their blind fucking hatred is a millimeter away from sex. And you're going, what is it that is driving you so much, so fervently, to want to have a piece of this fucking flesh a millimeter away from your teeth?
I take on, I like troll and Trump. You know, I do it just for the
Really?
section.
Hang on, hang on, Martin. I'll tell this for a second, then you can. So what happens is, I'm on the phone and I say, Martin, how are you fixed for Thursday? Terry McMahon is coming in at 4, and Martin says, hang on a second, Trump just tweeted, and he goes, and literally Trump could tweet, I'm going on a trade mission to Korea, and he has a tweet prepared that says, just resign, Donald. And he goes, that's Martin.
The trick to tell me is to get in. You have to get in with the first 30 tweets. You have to be really quick with the first 30 replies, and then I get this avalanche of true trolls.
Really?
Oh God, it's amazing. It's really. I have great fun because I go back and I look and see. You know, some guy. And the language. You know, it can be anything from like "go kill yourself" to "oh, you're just fucking stupid," and I get this. I mean, reams. I have to turn off the computer for 2 days and come back and then go through it. But when you go into them, and I've seen this about the trolls, when Trump is gone, these people won't exist. They have nothing else to do but defend this guy. They simply have nothing else. That's the entire purpose of being there.
Even that I can understand, because that's like a kind of a form of idolatry.
Yeah.
You know, it's like loving a band. What I can't understand, particularly with broadsheet, is they will interrogate your entire history. They will know stuff about you you've forgotten. And you go, where the fuck did they get this information? And they either present it as if they really know you, like know you as if incredibly intimately, knowledgeably, experiential engagement with you, or they present it as an irrefutable fact that you are this thing based on this narrative. And I go, where do they find the fucking time? Because they're all anonymous.
Oh,
obviously, like the cowards of the earth.
I think back, remember the movie 8 Mile? Okay, I remember his first time on stage, and he's to do his first bit, and he pukes with nervousness. And what he does is takes up that mic and he tells the worst of his life. He tells the worst of it, drops the mic, so where are you going to fucking go? I've given you the worst that's out there. Now what can you show me? And that's how I look at it. Okay.
But like when you talk about it, okay, I think, who was it referred to as a kick at the pricks? Wasn't it David Norris referred to the people who begrudged and gave shit?
Beckett, no? That
was Beckett, and he stole it. Sorry, he used that as that. No, he named his book that. Actually, that's what it was. But when you talk about like online trolling, I kind of find it very funny, because in the modern world, the anonymity, it's important, but it's not actually important in the grand scheme of things. But what actually happens is, as we've alluded to, they find out things about you, and they think that that's we find a weakness and we'll go at it. We all have we've
all got little things.
No, we've all lived.
Yeah,
that's what we've done. We have no peccadillos. We've lived, and life is for living. And I often tell the story that Shane Ross, before he was Minister Ross, was on, I think it was questions, was it prime time or at the time anyway. He was asked the question, when did he know that the country was fucked, basically, because when was it all destroyed? And he said he knew because he'd been up in Ulster Bank Group's head offices, and they were talking about launching 100% mortgage finance, and it was going to be done under the most stringent of conditions. And he said 30 minutes later he was up on O'Connell Street, and a young overzealous branch manager was out on the road offering it to everybody. My mother rang me and said, Tony, Shane Ross just blamed you for the recession. We all had our part to play, you know.
You fucker. I think I bought that off you.
So apart from trying to get funding for this new movie, and now that we're talking about people, just give him some fucking money for his movie. That's simply it. That's where you want to go next, is get some funding for this movie, get cracking on it.
Well, the film that I want to make is it's called A Dancehall Bitch, and it's two guys in a prison cell. And one of them decides to deconstruct his cellmate and reconstruct them as one. But he obviously doesn't have the surgical tools to do so it has to be psychological.
It's going to mentally break him down.
It has to be physiological. It has to be his reductionist notion of what women want. Now, for me, in relation to gender, in relation to feminism, in relation to rape, in relation to all the major conversations that are necessarily being had right now, this film couldn't come at a more timely fucking opportunity. But nobody wants to touch it. Because it's not playing by the reductionist rules that have been put in place. And those reductionist rules that are put in place right now are all women are victims and all men are bastards, which is a complete fallacy. And that notion of deciding what it is you want to do, what is the function of cinema. I've only made 2 films, but those 2 films were about our national psyche. And I want to do a third in a trilogy about our national psyche. And if we're not going to discuss the consequence of sustained and protected sexual abuse and the effect it has on men and generations of men, then what the fuck are we going to discuss?
Oh, to me, it sounds like a very worthwhile project. It just does. But you've got to run the gauntlet of this bureaucracy to try and get some funding.
Well, the problem is the use of the word worthwhile. Worthwhile is people's heads start to hang.
Yeah, maybe.
Where this is a provocative, dramatic, powerful fucking action film.
It's not art house. It's
not at all, no. But again, you just the simple question of what is it we're doing and why. More and more, all you got to do is look at our music. The music that's coming out of the country, the music that's protected and pumped out, versus the music that is original. That original music is left to die, and the other music that is committee-driven and committee-created and is nothing more than an advertisement for an emotion, a brief emotion, that's pumped out on the airwaves every day. So if we're going to make art or make anything that is reflective of the time we live in, you look at the 8 years of austerity. Our national broadcaster and our national film board, where were the films about the obscenity and dehumanization of austerity?
It's staggering.
They don't exist.
It's actually staggering.
Where was the films about political incompetence and corruption? They don't exist.
Well, when that movie came out there recently about the Post, the movie came out with the Post, and you have a lot of Irish journalists go, oh, the Post, feel good factor there, we're journalists, we do. And the honest to God truth is that the Irish journalists wouldn't even have the debate. Will we publish? Why publish? It just wouldn't even come up in fucking conversation. There's no bravery at all in what they do in media now. There's no bravery promoting stuff that's going to make people think. They don't want to promote any of that stuff. Keep you nice and quiet, keep you in your box, nice busy little monkeys, and just keep going.
But I think part of the problem is that we have this national notion of media, like we talked about earlier. What's stopping any woman or any man sitting down? The first screenplay I wrote the first scene with a butt of a pencil on the back of a bookie slip. That was the reality of how I started. There was nothing stopping anybody with semi-literary skills sitting down to write a book or a screenplay. But where the fuck are those scripts? I've read maybe 200 scripts in the last few years. Not one of them, not fucking one, was driven by any political mentality.
And do people send you scripts?
Sometimes, yeah. But none of them are about anything. Now, you go, okay, part of the privilege of being a teenager is you're a crazy, anarchic fucking moron who wants to rip up the system and find a new way of doing things. That's a necessary step toward the beginning of adulthood, where you realize you don't know fuck all until by the time you started learning, historically. Where are those kids? Where are the teenagers ripping the fucking flag down outside our government building? Where are the people insisting that the system has to change. We've been so neutered and anesthetized that, back to that phrase, the normalization of obscenity, that we accept obscenity as an inevitability. And we adjust accordingly. Like anybody who's abused, their main focus is to try and pacify the abuser to such a degree that they will be left alone. And that's the real success of our government. That we have 2 generations now of young people who just want to be fucking left alone.
Yeah, I have to agree.
That's a pretty...
I think it's a great place. It's the profound place to stop this and say, yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
But where we, like, honestly, Terry, thrilled I've had this conversation with you, mate. Really appreciate you coming in. I know it's, I badgered you for a little while, but it was well worth twisting your arm, even if I could barely reach up to your hip. But no, thanks for coming in, and really enjoyed that. It was a terrific conversation.
I'm glad to meet a McMahon that's somewhere over 5'6". That it gives me hope.
These are like the dodgiest height jokes in history.
yeah.
Dodgy daytime British TV here.
We're pretty bad. Listen, guys, thanks for listening. Again, thanks for your support. Thanks for everybody sharing. Thanks for everybody leaving reviews. Make sure you tell your friends, you let people know, because we rely on all of you, and that's what keeps the show on the road. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.